Thank you so much for coming here tonight as we hear author Katie Edwards discuss his new book, The Hourglass Throne. My name is Marla, and I'm the events and social media coordinator here at Flyleaf Books, and I just want to say thank you so much for coming out tonight and showing your local independent bookstore your support. To make our events more accessible, we are recording tonight's event, and it's going to go up in our YouTube channel within the next following days. And we kindly ask Katie to conclude by 7 p.m. so that we can be mindful of our colleagues who are closing up the store. Don't eat. So, Katie Edwards lives and writes in North Carolina, but has spent time in Massachusetts, Maine, Colorado, New Hampshire, Montana, and Washington. He had mercifully short careers in food service, interactive television, corporate banking, retail management, and bariatric furniture, which have all led to a much less short career in higher education. The first book in his urban fantasy series, which I know we all love, the Terror Sequence, called The Last Sun, was published by Fire in June 2018. Thanks.
And Flyleaf has been absolutely incredible recently too. It's for about, my God, a year, my agent and I looked in like a 100-mile radius to find a bookstore who could really partner with us on sending out autograph copies. And sure enough, they did. And not only that, it's gone so well, they opened it up to international sales as well. So I've got a lot of readers across the world who've asked for signed copies and stuff. And I know that whenever I say I'll mail it, that's usually, I'm usually setting myself up for something I probably will not do quickly or successfully. So having a bookstore I can work with has been great. And the people who work here are just absolutely amazing. They're a testament to why we still need bookstores. I would say that. I'm Keith. I pretty much know like 90% of the people in this room. That's almost the purpose of an event like this. I've never done a book signing or a book event. Advanced age has helped me with the ability to take off my glasses so I can't see you, which makes public speaking so much easier. But unfortunately, I've aged so much that I forget these are bifocals and I need them to read the piece of paper in front of me. So maybe it's kind of necessary. I've been very fortunate as a writer to do a lot of panels and go to a lot of conferences, but I've never done something like this. So I'm a little bit nervous, and especially because this room is filled with a lot of people I love and respect. To put it perfectly bluntly, people who've been with me, if not from the beginning, then from the beginning of his career, that's for sure. And to have you all together just reminds me of how far I've come. I won't try to talk too long. Essentially, for those of you who know, I write science fiction fantasy, SFF we call it. And urban fantasy is the genre I write in, which mostly imagines the world as you know it, taking cities, putting something in a city, but just adding supernatural elements into it. You know, looked at it from that perspective, Superman is an urban fantasy, Buffy the Vampire Slayer is an urban fantasy. It's something I've always absolutely 100% loved doing. It gives us the world that we know it, and as an author, gives you the rules to break the rules of the world as you know it and create something fantastical and to allow people to escape. And I think I wanted to be a writer from the beginning. I'm not sure I can ever remember wanting to do anything different from this. I remember the milestones we have in the youth are things that what led me to want to be a writer is never been standard, just like I've never really had a standard job growing up until lately, finding something that I really feel that I'm talented in and have a passion for. But I've lived in so many different states and had so many different jobs that no longer even exist. Interactive television, that used to be a thing, where you would program the television in closed caption so you could interact with it. Now it's called TV and a phone or a computer or a laptop or anything else with internet access. I've grew up in the Northeast. We had my parents worked hard, and to have, were able to give us a wonderful childhood, living and having vacation homes, spending time in not North Carolina, New Hampshire and Cape Cod. I went to school in Maine. When I graduated, I spent some time in Boston, went over to Colorado for a year, came back, eventually moved to Montana, then Washington State, and finally came down here. Much like I had jobs in Starbucks, interactive television, I was a paralegal in an international bank, worked in bariatric furniture as a purchasing agent, and finally found my way to HR. And that's sort of been the story of my life. Everything happened for a reason until I got to the point where I was ready to tell the story. And that's all I've ever wanted to do. When I was young, even my inspirations weren't, what everyone else might have. They were Mim, who brought a box of Hardy Boy books, and an entire box filled with these blue hardcover Hardy Boy books that I just went through. I remember that to this day. My mother used to watch soap operas, and I had General Hospital and One Life to Live On in the background. And when I'm coming home from school, having that constant stream, soap operas are nothing but dialogue. They're carrying a story just by the play of the characters and their words and what they say to each other. And this was during the Luke and Laura time, which, for those of you who know soap operas, was sort of a storied period in soap operas. And I absorbed all this stuff over my entire life, and then finally said to myself, someday when I felt that I was good enough to do it, I wanted to tell stories on my own. And that's led me to this point. What I didn't expect, the thing that really amazed me, is I always thought being published would be a lot like you spend a lot of time on a book and you ship it off into the world. And that's kind of it. You've done your job as the writer, you give it to the readers, and then you move on to the next project. What I had no idea about was that the world was going to share it back with me, that the readers were going to find something in my book that they could associate with, that they were sympathetic to, things that made them feel like they weren't just reading a story, but they felt like they were following the characters around. They became close with the characters, they developed relationships with them, and they get excited. And so the readers would reach out to me, and they would send me artwork. They would send me music that they choreographed on their own and they wrote on their own. I got a Mongolian piece of poetry. These amazing things that people shared simply because they wanted to say, this is how you affected me. And that was perhaps the biggest change to my life, and think of what I want to do with the rest of my days. It's not just writing, but it's sharing that world with people and connecting with my readers. And a lot of you here might be my readers. Some of you might know who I've interacted with. And I have a really energetic group of readers. I mean, people who followed me from the beginning and get really involved in the stories. They bought it the day they came out. They read it overnight. They'll buy the Audible version, they'll buy the paperback. I am so honored by this interaction I've had with people. I got a hand-carved wooden box with a stained glass top on it as someone who wanted to celebrate my third book. Someone stitched a horse, and I'm just sweating, I'm so nervous when I do stuff like this. And I'm still feeling like 100-degree weather outside as I came. But someone had this amazing, incredible horse blanket, Bruce, and he stitched an emotional reaction to every line in the first book on the blanket, so that it was almost a color-coded string of reactions to what they experienced when they went through the novel. Things like that, when readers come back and share it to you, realize that you've entered into a compact for something much bigger. It's not just me writing a story and sharing it with the world, it's them wanting to share something back with me. There's the creativity that they feel that was inspired by what they read. It's something that they feel brings the story to life in their head. And that's where I am right now as a writer. My third book just came out. This is going to be a 9-book series. And usually when a writer starts writing, they don't plan a 9-book series. It's not the sort of thing that you ever get much traction with a publisher. You can't go to them and say, hey, stick with me for the next 9 years. I'm going to be a solid bet. Don't worry about it. You have to really be established to get that sort of chance. I lucked out. And mostly it's because one of the things I've realized is that publishing, it's not, I don't want to say it's as mercenary as who you know, but the people you know help you. It's writers really look out for each other. The industry really is very accommodating to people who are looking to grow their readership and find other writers to partner with. Scott put me in touch with the person who became my agent in the beginning. I remember her name is Sarah. I sent her the first 3 chapters. I was able to skip over the dreaded query letter phase and send her the first 3 chapters. Within 2 days, she asked for my whole novel, and that was on a Friday night, and that Monday morning, she signed me. And within 2 days of that, my manuscript was going out to publishers, and within 2 weeks, I had a deal with Pyre, and stuff like that doesn't happen that often. It's a smaller publishing house, but I was really lucky in my early stages. And everything after that, what happened is, then it's me looking, how to put this, the experience of what I went through between the first and the third book changed over the course of it. When you write your first book, it's in a vacuum. You're sitting in front of the computer and you imagine people reading it. you imagine how they might react to it, but you don't even know, at least at that point, I didn't have an agent, I didn't have a publisher, I didn't necessarily know what people would think of it. So what the tone of that novel is might not be where you wind up. And the big thing about my writing is I've always, from the beginning, it's been a priority to me to show representation. I grew up gay in a world where, at my age, there wasn't much out there. I grew up in a fantastic family. I had people who loved me and stuck with me and celebrate all my achievements, but from my age, the way I grew up, there really wasn't anything out there to hold on to. You know, if you were to talk openly about issues like that, you're more likely to get scheduled an appointment with your priest than you were, you know, anything that was maybe meaningful to your own self-discovery. And I spent the first 20 years of my life not talking to people about who I was, and that changed me. It's not a very fun period in someone's life to feel that they can't be who they want themselves to be. So I looked at all these stories I read as a child, the Hardy Boys books and the soap operas or whatever it might be, and I thought to myself, I'd love to tell the same type of stories, but I'd love to get better representation. And I'd love people to see themselves in a mirror, if the book is a mirror, that they can find a relationship with the characters that means something to them because of their own experiences and their own struggles and their own trials. And that's what I set out to do. I thought at best maybe I'd be in a niche. I'd be a very small marginalized market. What I didn't realize is that the world had changed around me. And I know that where we are today in the world, it's tough. There are things going wrong. You know, we worry about the environment, we worry about politics, we worry about the state of relations between individual parties in our country. But I mean, let's never forget, with a lot of social issues, where we've come from where we were, there's no way we're ever going to progress that far. There's been some amazing accomplishments since I was young, and here I thought I'd be giving this book out to people, and that it would be at best niche, marginalized market. And instead I found an audience, and I found that audience has grown, and they've come with me from one book to the other, and they've told me more representation they want. They've helped me realize even, I thought I was diverse simply because I had a novel that I started where there were going to be a lot of characters who were white, male, gay men, and realizing what a slim representation of diversity that was probably my first lesson as a writer. The interaction that I had with my readers showed me that if you're willing to listen to what they have to say and grow as an author, if you're really willing to grow as a person and maybe even own mistakes you made as a writer, areas that you could grow from, there's a lot of room to bring new readers into this who get excited by the fact that you're simply responding to them, that you're accessible on social media, that they feel that when they tweet you something, you're actually hearing it. You're not just a voice, or you're just not a name on the book. It's not just an author's name on a piece of paper, but it's someone behind that who actually is building a story for you and wants to share that world for you and wants to know what your experience is. Which all leads me to the point where here I am with my third book just comes out. It's a 9-book series. It's going to be broken into 3 trilogies. And from the beginning, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. Before the first book was published, I had all 9 stories laid out. And because I knew where I wanted to go, I was able to put a lot of Easter eggs in the book. Little things I wanted readers to find along the way that they could go back on 3, 4 books down the road and say, that's what they were saying, or that's the clue you were leaving, or that's what the person was really hiding from you. So getting this third book out, where I made a commitment that I wasn't going to make readers wait 9 novels to find out the true mystery at the heart of it, knowing that I've fully concluded my first trilogy. I can honestly say my first 3 books are out. I can see my readers finally noticing a lot of the paths I was leading along the way and where I want to go in future books, and seeing the response to that just over the last 2 weeks has given me a lot of encouragement for where I might want to go next. And where I might want to go next, and I did have to make sure that this wasn't getting posted tomorrow. I'm hoping that it can get posted next Monday, because I would love to announce some of the things that are going on that I can't announce on social media yet. I'm finally moving from a phase where I'm not just thinking like an author, I'm thinking like a content producer, not just a content creator, but I'm thinking about starting my 2nd series, for instance. That is a reality now. I'm going to be able to announce, on Saturday night it's going to be the official announcement, but I'm going to be able to announce a brand new series. The first book is going to be called The Eidolon. It's going to be an expansion story to the novel I just published. One of the weird things about publishing is that you find out there are some quirks to it that affect what you do as a writer. For instance, finding out my publisher didn't want me to exceed the page length of my previous books. And there was a lot of reasons for that, because there's a paper shortage in the world. We're in the middle of a pandemic. There are supply chain issues, and that has just crippled everything. So they didn't want it to be longer pages than previous books. Yet I had a novel outline, which easily was going to add 100 pages over a previous book. And moments like that gave me sort of an introspection of, what do I do? Do I just yank it from the novel, or is there something else I can do with it? It was a storyline I liked. It was about the secondary characters in the novel. So this is where I'm really excited about the next stage of my career, and being able to tell people that I'm finally ready to launch the second series. I'm going to do a hybrid publishing model where I'll own my own e-rights. So I'll sell the book myself, the ebook myself, on Amazon. Amazon has approached me and made a deal for the Audible contract, which is fantastic. It's going to be a novella, but the Audible is going to have an Audible version. And my Audible versions tend to be pretty popular. My readers listen to it a lot. They listen to it while they're reading the book on WhisperSync on Audible. It's been something that's really gratifying. But I think the thing that I'm most happy about is that when you are trying to do something that's less traditional publishing, usually there are certain options, such as print on demand on Audible. You can self-publish things, and they'll print the book for people who want a physical copy, but you don't necessarily get any profits from that as an author. But we reached out and we found a subscription book service that's going to do a 1,000 limited edition hardcovers. So here I have this thing that I'm building going forward, where I'm going to be able to own some of the rights. I'm going to be relying on someone to do a hardcover version, which I've never had of my writing. And then I have Amazon stepping in to do the Audible version. Between the three of those, with me being able to make decisions and time this so that it's placed well with my main series, which I'll continue to do, it's opening a whole new door for me. I can actually possibly think 5 years from now, I might be able to consider myself a full-time writer. Whereas I never, ever would have thought that something that would have happened to me. It's just not a gift that most writers get. I feel like I've covered a lot of ground here. I didn't realize how weird it's going to be talking in front of people, you know. And I forgot that I need these to actually read the piece of paper, so I can just put these off or put my sunglasses on. But what I talk about in panels is usually a lot more structured. When I'm in a room like this, where I just know a lot of people in the room, I tend more to look towards you to see if you have questions about what my experience has been, or where I'm going to be going, or I can't even imagine some of the questions I get. But I'd rather do that than me tell you about stuff that makes me feel a little bit unreal. It doesn't even necessarily, this journey I'm going to becoming a published writer is something I've wanted my entire life, but it's finally happened. You can't even really sit back and enjoy it because you're racing through it. You know, you're building the bicycle as you're riding it downhill. But this is a moment where I'd rather just kind of step back and see if you guys have any questions and let me answer. Go for it.
Yeah, I was thinking about so you mentioned a lot of things that you focus on in writing and all that. And one of the things I think is apparent to all your readers is just the mastery you bring to the table. You're an incredible writer. And that shows in what the ratings look like and how people love the series and all that. So is there a moment where it just kind of clicked, that you knew this wasn't just something that you liked, it was something you were good at?
Yeah, one of the things that it's really popular to ask authors are like, what would you recommend for new writers? And the number one thing I always recommend is a writing group. I'm very fortunate to have, raise my hand if you're in my writing group, or associated with the writing group, that includes. The writing groups are to be able to get constant feedback on what you're writing, and also to give that feedback on other people's writing. That's one of the things that people don't quite realize, that it's not just about you getting information on what you've done, it's you being able to do that to someone else. It helps you actually grow as a writer yourself. That was the moment where, when I finally reached out to a writing group, Blake Lee Lord over there is the one who created it. Always will credit her for this. Not just creating a writing group, but creating one that works, a template that works, one that's kind and responsive, that encourages frequent submissions, and it doesn't feel like the feedback you're getting is performance art, where it could be cutting or witty. You don't want that. You want something that's so motivating that even if it's filled with criticism, you run home and you edit because you're so excited at what's being said, because people are giving you serious feedback as if you're a serious writer. So when I took that step to become, finally said to myself that, you know, I've got a job I love. I finally found my way into human resources. I got a job at the UNC system with Ann Lemon over there, who, everyone in this room, there's so many people who've left an imprint on my life, not just my parents and my sister and my family, but Anne, for instance. I remember when I started out working at HR, and I said that not only does this what I'm do, but this system office, working in a place that oversees higher education for all the 17 campuses in the UNC system, this was a great job. I could finally focus on other things in my life, but at first, I had to learn how to do that job. I remember that was when we were trying to get delegated authority to bring SHRI people into the HR system, something which campuses did not want really whatsoever. We went on a road tour. We had to go in front of people and explain why this was a good thing for them. I still remember going to one campus where they put you on a stage in front of a room full of people and abandoned you and said, you defend it, and you did. And I remember leaving afterwards going, I will never be able to do something like that. And you just kind of laughed at me. And you just, instead of answering, you taught me. You taught me how to stand in front of a crowd and speak about what I believe in, to come prepared with knowledge and to answer questions and try to bond with the people in front of you. Best lesson I could have ever got for going on to be a writer and doing panels and things like that. But when I finally felt confident in my life, I had a job, I had a paycheck, I had health insurance, I have a pension, then you can start thinking a little bit more about what else is going to make you fulfilled. That was the moment that I knew that I was ready to start doing something. I think what changed for me is being in the writing group and getting a positive response from people immediately, and getting that sense of encouragement that you could possibly send something to an agent and not be laughed at. You know, that you might get more than a rejection letter, you might get a career out of it. And I wasn't, when I first started out, I mean, I've been writing off and on every writer will tell you this. They've got a drawer filled with chapters they started and never finished, novels they began and never went anywhere, outlines that they want to get back to someday, but they're never sure about. But I knew when I started this, when I did the 2-page prologue to the series, which didn't show up in book 1, but showed up in book 2, I knew from the moment I wrote that prologue that this is the story I was going to tell. It just spoke to me. You just had that sense. And I think that that's usually the thing that makes a writer successful, because they write something and it responds to something inside them. Not necessarily thinking what's going to happen when I share this with people outside this room, but what's going to happen, how am I going to feel writing this? Is it going to pull passion out of me? And when I started writing this series, it broke the rules of everything I thought for writing. I didn't think I was funny. I didn't think I could put humor in a novel. And it turns out that's one of the backbones of my story. I started from a place of darkness. I told you, I mean, growing up the way I did, there's that journey of moving to a place where you feel positive about yourself and talk about it with other people. You go through a lot of darkness before you get to that point. And this series started in that darkness in a way. And the reaction I got from my readers and my own reaction to the story, the lighter elements, the found family is a big core concept. People who come together and they make their own family. It was filled with light and love and recovery from trauma. Not just trauma, but recovery from it. The constant struggle to make a place for it in your life and still move forward became the backbone of the series. And it was strong and supportive enough that it made me feel good. It got me through the pandemic at least. That was the moment that I really knew that this is not just be a published writer, but this is the story I was meant to write. This is the story of my lifetime.
One of the things I really love about the world that you create is the novellas and the episodes. Seeing the pandemic episodes and the Christmas episodes and all the other novellas in between the novels really gives you a chance to see the characters and in a setting where there's not necessarily a world-ending crisis, and you really get the sense of this chosen family even more. It really helps to fill out who these characters are and how important their relationships are to each other. As you're doing this next novel, are there still going to be additional episodes or smaller pieces, short stories that will continue to expand that world, or are you focusing more on putting those into new novels?
I think I'll still do both. What Mac is saying, that I made a big premium at one point about doing free content for my readers, that between the novels I had short stories I wanted to write, or scenes, or whatever it might be, and I started doing that. But what really changed was the pandemic. When the pandemic started, like everyone else, I didn't know what was going on. I was scared. I was doing the same grocery store rushing that everyone else did. And I live on my own, so just this idea of a world on fire outside your door and you're by yourself, it was frightening. So I put my characters in quarantine too. And I wrote about their experiences of coming back from the grocery store and remembering everything but toilet paper, you know, and having 8 different types of cheese because you're desperately pulling stuff off the shelves, and the conversations you have, like, we can fight monsters, but we can't fight a virus. I put my characters through it. And I would post little scenes every day for about a 3-month period in the beginning of the pandemic, we were all still washing our groceries at that point. And my readers found it and they attached to it. And probably some of the most meaningful feedback I've ever gotten was them saying that I helped get them through it too. I gave them something to focus on, which had more hope in it than they might have been feeling at the moment. And so I kept that up. I kept on doing this content between the series, and I know it worked. You can tell a correlation. Publishing, everything happens 6 to 12 months afterwards. Even the royalty statements you get, you know, that's 6 months to a year in the past. But I could see that whenever I was doing this free content, I was driving new readers to my story. So there was a reason for it as a writer, which it made sense, but also just like doing it. It was like writing fanfic of my own series. And I could literally finish it and put it out there and people would read it on the spot. I think that's where I really got the idea that I need to move into more of a hybrid publishing model where I can control the delivery of it. Because waiting a year when you want something to hit the market the next day, that can be really tough. So yes, I am gonna, some of that content's gonna become a lot more polished with, I hired a PR person and a cover person, and it'll be packaged nice and pretty, but I will still continue doing my free stories too, because it's like my fanfic. Like, there's no quicker way to connect with your readers in a case like that than to give them a story or something and share it with them through your website. It's really, technology really offers us things that, it's transformed publishing in a way that I can't wait to see publishing catches up with.
Go ahead.
I'm definitely a highly dedicated reader. I got brought into this world and into the fold shortly before the publication of the second book. And I think for me, what I love so much about the series is the characters and how character and relationship driven these novels are. And you know, it feels like such a privilege and an honor to be in a relationship with your characters and how you realize I'm getting emotional. I feel like they're so fully realized, and you know, I have known them for a very short period of time. You've known them for a lot longer than that. I'm curious to hear, I guess, how you feel about your relationship with them, how that's changed over time.
That's a good question. I said that from the beginning. I plotted 9 books out, and one of the reasons I did that is because I'm an outliner. In writing you call it pantsing versus planning. People who plan out their novels will write by the seat of their pants. I can't write by the seat of my pants. I need to plan out in advance. So once I started doing that, I found an opportunity. Whenever anything like funny or core to the character occurred to me, I would write it down. And even if there wasn't a space for it in what I was writing then, there was always a space for it 2, 3 books down the road. Over time, when you start doing stuff like that, it really cements the characters in your head. Their voices become so distinct. I don't know. Part of me always wonders about the multiverse theory. If multiverse is infinite, somewhere out there these characters maybe exist. If every combination of everything is possible, I must be pulling this information from somewhere because I don't know how easy it is. So yeah, my relationship with them deepens all the time about learning. What are their development arcs going to be? Where are they going to go? With the main character for the first 3 novels, he was an unreliable narrator. He kept stuff from the readers, and the readers were clued into this. So every scene I had to write from 2 perspectives, both what the reader knew, but also what I knew that he couldn't say that eventually readers would learn about. Something like that. Characters who I thought were going to be incidental turned out to be more important. Some characters I thought were more important turned out to be more incidental. It didn't necessarily change the pace of what I was planning, but as my own affection for them grew, their place in the story grew. I also spend a lot of time paying attention to what my readers say. I've read every review of my book, and I've been very fortunate with that. I have very energetic, committed, passionate readers, and they leave reviews. and the reviews in particular, the ones that say, I love your novel, but those are the ones I pay attention to. Those are the ones where they really give you some good advice, and they do give me good advice about the characters, about which ones they're responding to, which ones they want to grow, which ones they would like to see better representation for. Something like, for instance, before I started the 3rd book, one of my readers is disabled and asked, you don't really have much representation for disabled people. And I spent a lot of time thinking about that. I worked with her and we came up with an idea for a character. And indeed, I'm going to be introducing a main character who's has severe mobility issues. And I wouldn't have done that if I didn't have this relationship with my readers and I didn't know what they said. So I guess how I feel about the characters is really driven by them as well. Not in the sense of I'll like vote people off the island simply because my readers don't like them, but I certainly am more than happy to give them more airtime if they're fan favorites. It doesn't hurt either that each of the characters is a fragment of my personality. Like there's the one character who will say exactly what I want to say when the man in front of you has 13 items in the 12 item or less line. And I have the character who always says the nice thing, and I have the character who's always going to say the noble thing. And some of those are reflections of my own personalities, of moods I'm in, and that helps keep them distinct as well. Stacey.
Totally just took away my whole comment, by the way, and you just answered everything. Just, what you see in each one of your characters from yourself.
Yeah, it's everyone has a bit of a slice. There are some that don't, and those are the characters that surprise me the most, the ones who aren't like me at all. And inevitably, those are the ones that the readers, well, I don't know if that says anything about me, but that's the one the readers respond to. Like Quinn is a character he's a prophet, and he thinks of everything in multiple verb tenses because he can see all sorts of possibilities. And he was supposed to have a tiny piece of the first book, and he ended up becoming the heart of the series. That's an example of how readers really drove something into being. Not just because it was a character I wrote and I could respond to and I could write it well, but my God, the reader feedback on something like that, it really does give you a sign if you're going in the right direction or not. It's not really easy to read your reviews all the time. You're never going to get ones that are, you're going to get some hard ones sometimes too. You're even going to get some ones where people are like, I love your book so much, but you got the two characters together who shouldn't be together, so here's your 2 stars. But it's the sort of thing you grow from and you learn from. If you pay attention, it gives you a lot of insight of your own direction when you take the novel.
So I also had a quick character question, so I'm going to move on to my next question, which was themes, because the found family books is something I absolutely love. Is that a found theme, or did you plan the themes?
I always knew it was going to be a theme of the series, but not nearly as much as it's been. My series, Found Family, is when people who maybe have a hard life and they don't necessarily have their own family support structure come together and they make their own family. And that's really a natural fit for the city I've created because it's based around courts where they come together around people and protect each other against the city. I didn't really talk much. For those of you who don't know my book, it reimagines a modern day Atlantis. The world as we know it, but with Atlantis. And when Atlantis was revealed back in the 60s, there was a war, things are better now, but everything takes place on this island that I call New Atlantis. And it's a very hard island, bad things happen. There are monsters and evil people, but at the core of it, it is found family. And I didn't expect it would be nearly as big. I did not think I would have children in my novel. I did not think, I don't have children. I got 2 nephews, one over there, but I didn't think I could do it, but it turned out that it's just growing this found family turned out to be such a joy as a writer, and readers were responding to it. It just became a natural fit. It also lightened up the tone of the series. I worry about that sometimes. I grew up with Star Wars, and people talk about the difference between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. You've got Han Solo being carted away in one and Ewoks in another. But at the end of the day, I do appreciate the lighter tones that found family brings to a story, because even when dark things are happening to the characters, they always go back to a sense of hope. They come together and they have each other's back, and that can take you through a really hard ending to a novel. And my 3rd book does end on a hard note. I have my first major character death, which is a really tough thing to do as a writer. It's not necessarily a win for the main characters, but I was able to end it on a positive note because I had that found family and they were able to come back together and support each other. So
I think as a reader, it helps you too, right?
I think so too. At least that's what I've heard from a lot of people who've read. A lot of reviews I've read have thanked me for the epilogue. if I didn't give them that little bit of coming back together in the end, it would have been a really hard ending. It's tough to do a series when you. I would love every series just to be full of joy and sunbeams, but in every series you need conflict. Things need to go on, and the 3rd book of the series probably should be something you try to hit out of the ballpark. And I went for it. I really did with this book, and I'll be very glad to start the next book, which will be a lot more lighter, a lot more found family and recovery too.
I don't know him.
And first, and then you.
Okay, so the first trilogy is Lord's son coming into his house.
Yes.
Can you give us a hint what the next trilogy is?
Yeah, and then even that, we talk about the characters and what they mean to you. Rune accelerates storylines all the time. He wasn't supposed to become the head of his house into the second trilogy, and he does it at like the end of the second book instead. It's characters have their own mind when you're a writer, and he drove that a little bit quicker. But I have said from the beginning, the first 3 books are about secrets that the main character, Rune, is keeping from the reader. These are things where it was very clear that Rune is being an unreliable narrator about one thing in his past. The next 3 books, now that that's finally come out, are going to be about him learning what he doesn't know about it. So there have been people after him and his family the entire time, and now it's when he starts going on the offensive and learning a little bit more about that. I'm pretty excited about the next trilogy. That's why I wanted to make sure this recording didn't hit before Monday, because not only am I announcing this new series that I'm starting, and really excited about the Eidolon and getting this hardcover version, but things must have been going well because my publisher doesn't offer contracts more than a book in advance. So before book 3 even hit the stand, they extended it to book 5. So I am under contract for book 5 officially. That's a definite, and Audible too, Audible and print copy. So the next trilogy is a reality, and it is shaping up, and I've talked with my editor about it. I can even announce the titles of the next 2 books, but like, you guys are all just looking like this doesn't really mean much, but I promise you, my dedicated, like, hardcore readers, they're gonna scream when they hear about this, because the next novel is called The Misfit Caravan, which is, I've already announced, but book 5 is called The Dragon's Rise. And that's me hinting that dragons are a huge part of the next trilogy. And I've been hinting about that for about 3 books. 3 books that dragons exist in this city, and they haven't really done on the page, but the fact that they're core to what's coming is becoming apparent. So I was gonna save that and not tell people because book 5 is not out for a few more years, but I'm really awful at keeping secrets. So I decided to lean into it, and if people are excited about the idea of dragons, let them know that dragons are a thing. So they're coming.
Well, I'm one of those dedicated.
You say,
I'm one of those dedicated readers, and I don't really know you, but that makes me very happy. And I won't tell anybody.
The average book is about, let's say, around 100,000 words. I've got well over 300,000 words in brainstorming notes alone. This series is heavily plotted out, so I am excited to share the next trilogy. Like when I say dragons are going to be part of it, some of my strongest world building is yet to come, and I prize my world building. That's not just the fact that I can try to inject humor in a book, but I really want something to be so surreal and overwhelming that you feel like you've lived in the book as you're reading it. That's how I know I read a good book. Has anyone ever read Wool, the book Wool? It's about a book where, imagine a post-apocalyptic society where people live in miso-silos for generations upon generations upon generations, to the point that miso-silo is their entire world. And one of the people who reviewed it said, by the end of this book, you will have lived in this world. And I remembered that review, and sure enough, I know exactly, that's what I strive for too. I want people to feel like it would be a good day if they could just follow my main characters around. And I'm building a good second trilogy for them. I'm trying to, at least.
This is really, I guess, more philosophical than anything else, but talking about found family. I've been around a while and been in a number of different families over the years, and I think found family is about community, it's about finding your tribe, your people. What do you think came first? Was it the writers beginning to find their way to that, or was it people who influenced that?
Well, I think to a certain extent, it's always been, found family's always been popular, but I think especially now, for a world that's highly connected, we're not always highly connected. And the nature of what friendship means has changed since the internet has exploded. This is what I believe personally, as I cover up the microphone and slam my hand over it, that people are looking, there's so much more ability to form groups of friendships with people who don't live next door to you. And I remember even growing up, they would say your on-ramp friends aren't really your friends. Like those are just people you talk to online. That's really not true anymore. Some of the deepest friendships I have are based on people who live across the country now. I've just met them through my writing. And I think that is found family. That is reaching out and finding people like you, putting together a community and using that community to help you get through your day. And it's such a supportive nature. Just the concept of it is so supportive. The people who gravitated toward it mimic that. And that's actually, you made me think about that. I wondered, why am I so lucky with my readers? Not every writer is. Why do I not have any toxic readers so far? Why has my social media been so pleasant? And it has. Twitter shouldn't be pleasant. And yet I have nothing but positive compliments of what people send to me, but even more so, they talk to each other. They banded together and created a Discord channel. There are hundreds of people and they know each other's first names. They're flying, I have about 20 to 30 people flying to Con Carolina who became friends through this, and they're all gonna be wearing Hawaiian shirts, I hear. but that's just the nature. I found family. It's so generous and kind and, I don't know, supportive. But I definitely, once I saw that and the reaction that got, I gravitated it because it made my life better. It really did. I didn't necessarily want to be in a dark place every day I was writing. So having a story where there are dark elements, but a lot of humor at the heart of it, gallows humor, I guess you would call it, I don't know, it made me happy.
I've been in various fandoms over a long period of time, and early on, it was the thing you did not speak of.
Yeah.
You didn't talk about being a fan of anything or being passionate about something.
Yeah,
And
it's.
watching that change has been just wonderful. It's life-changing.
I hold that as, that's one of the things I will never take that for granted, how amazing my readers are and how well they get along together. And, fingers crossed, knocked on wood, I hope it always stays that way. It can be a dark thing for a writer when something goes negative, and it enters a kind of a toxic note into that relationship. But if you, I don't know, you get what you put into it. How about that for a mantra of life?
Your other readers on Twitter just because of that.
Just noticed your t-shirt too. I have a merchandise store. If you had told me 20 years ago I'd have a merchandise store for my books, and you're wearing a t-shirt from it, which is why I'm noticing it. So thank you.
And are the earrings because they're sons?
Yes.
Okay. Impressive.
Charms I got on Amazon.
I
take my fandom seriously.
I take my fandom seriously too. I mean, and so I've seen good ones and bad ones, so I just happened to wander into something that worked. I did, thank God, that, and it's not me, it's them, it's the readers, how they come together and how they act together. Like for book 3, I didn't do promo activities, they did, it was reader run. They spent a month doing these wonderful street teams, and they had contests and artwork submissions and points, and all I had to do was contribute prizes and do meetings with people. But when readers come together, I don't like using the word fandom because it makes me feel arrogant to say, but I call them my readers. But when my readers come together, they can move mountains, I've noticed. So.
Well, from my point of view, and I just stumbled onto the series about 2 months ago, and that first book didn't have to wait so long.
Yeah, that's.
I had this experience, and I've had it a few times, and I read a lot. But when you get about a quarter of the way into a book, and it suddenly hits you, oh my God, I love this.
I mean, I know what that's like when I read books that speak to my heart. So the fact that there are people who feel that for me, it's just a never-ending wonder. It truly is. So.
Yeah, that 9-book arc, I think that's wild. It terrifies me. And I know you've planned it all out. So you don't have to get into spoilers. You don't have to explain why. If you, in your opinion, which book is going to be the hardest for you to stick the landing on?
This third book, honestly, to a certain extent, it really was.
Yeah.
I think the next one is going to be the 6th book. It's the trilogy climax, because you really got to go all out for a trilogy climax. At least that's what I feel. I never worried about the sophomore books or the middle books. That worked out for me, but I know that the next trilogy, Chapter 2, is going to have some difficult things. So whenever a story can't be so filled with lightness and sunshine that there's no consequences when bad stuff happens. So when you lose a character you're used to writing a lot, when they leave the page for one reason or another, it's hard for you as a writer too. I'm not looking forward to the it's being recorded. Ignore that. No one else dies ever. Ever. Yes.
Let me just say that I'm happy to hear that you've been heavily influenced by soap operas, because that means you believe people can come back from the dead.
If my readers know me, they know I've got a lot of plans and aces up my sleeve, so hopefully they know that there's never anything I do that's gonna. I want the stories to leave readers feeling hopeful. I want them to feel like they've been on a journey with friends, so I'm not gonna break their heart too much.
This is maybe an annoying question, but are you confirming that he's dead then?
Let's say that, well, let me speak from the perspective of Quinn, okay? How about that? Because Quinn is my prophet, he can see probabilities, right? Imagine he's in a Schrodinger's box right now. Like sometimes he winds up retiring on a beach with Mayan, and then sometimes something else happens, and then sometimes something else happens on that. But all things can possibly happen. But I will say though that the way that book ended, I deliberately wanted to keep that door open. I didn't want something. When readers are reacting very emotionally to what you're writing, you have a sense of responsibility in how you present it to them. I've always felt that. And so I am taking that seriously. Like I signaled in advance that there was a major character death, and not many writers will ever do that. They want them to be drawn into the story and be surprised by it. But I also know people are, there are a lot of people very emotionally invested in the characters, and that's a hard blow if you don't know what's coming. So that's something I've learned along the way, that there's a reason for content warnings, and I anchor mine to my website now and drive people there from the book if they're interested in doing it. That feels like a content warning for me. And if people want to know there's reason to hope, absolutely there's reason to hope. Anything can happen from this point. There's room for impulse in all stories.
Okay.
I don't have anything else to say. But I don't know what time it is. I didn't speak too long to take it experience. Definitely made me nervous to do this in front of a crowd, but like I